Wait, what did you just say? The billionaire asked, his smile fading as the little black girl pointed at the crumbling wooden house across the street. That's my dream house, she said softly, her small brown finger trembling with excitement. Her eyes sparkled like the morning sun after a heavy rain. One day when I grow up, I'm gonna fix it and live there with my mama. I just know it's meant for us. The billionaire's laughter echoed through the quiet neighborhood like thunder. It wasn't a cruel laugh at first, just disbelief. Sweetheart, he said, still chuckling, that place? It's falling apart. Why would anyone want that old wreck? The girl didn't flinch. She smiled, a little shy but full of hope. Because it feels warm, she said. Like someone loved it once. And just like that, his laughter stopped. The air grew heavy. He turned toward the house again, his face pale now, his chest tight. Something about the way the wind moved through the broken windows, the tilt of the porch swing. It looked too familiar. No, it couldn't be. The same swing. The same chipped blue paint. The same small crack on the front step where he used to trip as a boy. His eyes widened. His knees weakened. His heart began to pound. That was his childhood home. But how did this little girl, someone he'd never met, know about it? Before he could speak, the girl ran off toward the old house calling, "Come on, I'll show you my favorite room." He stood frozen, unable to move. His breath caught in his throat. Because if that house was really his, then that meant she wasn't just any girl. She was connected to something he thought he'd left behind forever. And that's when everything changed. Here we tell stories of strength, love, and redemption, where every struggle hides a deeper meaning. Stay inspired and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories. The story began 3 weeks earlier, on a bright Saturday morning in Atlanta. The billionaire, James Callahan, was late for a board meeting. His black SUV roared down the city streets, windows up, air conditioning humming. He didn't see the world outside anymore. The street vendors, the people waiting for the bus, the laughter of kids running barefoot. His world existed in glass towers, luxury hotels, and numbers on a screen. He was a man who had everything. Everything but peace. His assistant, Claire, sat beside him, scrolling through emails. "Sir, the real estate team just closed the downtown deal. Another 20 million profit." "Good," James replied flatly, eyes fixed ahead. "Tell them to move to the next." He didn't even smile. Not once. That same morning, just a few miles away, Ava Thompson, a 9-year-old black girl with big dreams and an even bigger heart, was walking home from the soup kitchen with her mom Monica. The plastic bags they carried were light. 2 loaves of bread, a few cans of beans, and a packet of noodles. "Don't worry, Mama," Ava said, clutching her mom's hand. "Someday, I'll buy us a house. A big one. With a red door and a garden full of sunflowers." Her mother smiled weakly. "Dreams don't buy food, baby." Ava looked down, hurt for a moment, but she didn't stop dreaming. They passed by the abandoned house every day after school. The house everyone said was haunted. But to Ava, it wasn't scary. It was beautiful. The paint was chipped, the roof slanted, and the front door hung loose, but the house whispered to her. It made her feel something she couldn't explain. She'd stand at the rusty gate for minutes, staring. "One day, I'm gonna fix you," she'd whisper. "You just wait." That day, an old woman appeared from across the street. She was thin, her hair silver and wild, her skin wrinkled like old paper, but her eyes, soft and wise, gleamed with kindness. "You like that house, huh?" the old woman asked, her voice gentle. "Yes, ma'am," Ava replied quickly, standing up straight. "It's my dream house." The woman smiled, studying her. Most folks don't see beauty in broken things. Ava tilted her head. "Mama says I see the world upside down." The old woman chuckled. "Maybe you see it just right." She walked closer, her cane tapping on the ground. "You know, a long time ago, a little boy used to live there. Said it was his whole world. Then one day, he just disappeared." Ava's eyes widened. "What happened to him?" The old woman sighed. "No one really knows. But they say when he left, the house started dying too." A cold breeze swept through the yard, rustling the dead leaves. Ava hugged herself, but her heart felt strangely warm. "Do you know his name?" she asked. The old woman looked toward the sky, as if searching her memory. James, she said softly. James Callahan. Ava repeated it in a whisper. James Callahan. That name would mean nothing to her, but it would change her life forever. Because at that very moment, miles away, James Callahan was standing in a meeting room, signing documents that would change an entire neighborhood's future. The plan was simple. Tear down old homes, build luxury condos, and raise prices so high that poor families couldn't stay. To him it was business. To people like Ava and her mom, it was disaster. When the city list of condemned properties came up on the screen, one small photo caught James's eye. A broken-down blue house with a tilted porch. Something in his chest tightened. "Where's this one?" he asked. The man in charge, Mr. Harlan, shrugged. "Just an old property in the South District. No one lives there anymore. We'll demolish it next week." James nodded. Fine. But his eyes lingered on the image longer than he meant to. Something about it looked familiar. He pushed the thought aside. He didn't have time for memories. But that night, he couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, the image of that little house stuck in his mind. He remembered flashes, running barefoot across the porch, his mom's laughter, his dad fixing the door with a hammer. Then the fights. The shouting. The night they left and never came back. It had been over 40 years. He thought the house had been destroyed long ago. The next morning, he made a decision without telling anyone. He would visit it. Just once. For closure. When he arrived, he didn't expect to find anyone there. But there she was, a little girl sitting on the front steps, humming to herself, sketching the house with a tiny pencil on a piece of cardboard. He didn't know who she was, but she looked so peaceful, like she belonged there. He stepped closer, smiling politely. "Hi there," he said. "You live here?" She shook her head, grinning. "No, sir. Not yet. But someday I will." He chuckled. "Someday, huh? You planning to fix it up yourself?" "Yes, sir. My dream house." That's when he laughed. A deep, rich laugh that startled a few birds nearby. "This? Your dream house?" he repeated, pointing at the collapsing roof. "Kid, that's not a house. That's a pile of wood waiting to fall." The girl frowned a little but didn't argue. "Maybe," she said softly. "But everything broken can be fixed if you love it enough." He stopped laughing. Her words hit him like a brick to the chest. The same thing his mother used to say when his father broke things in anger. Everything broken can be fixed if you love it enough. He froze. The world seemed to stop spinning. That's when she pointed to the porch swing. "And when I fix it," she said proudly, "I'll keep that swing right there, just like it is. That's my favorite part." James's breath caught. His heart started racing. That swing. That exact swing. He knew it. He turned, staring at the house with trembling hands. This wasn't just any place. This was his childhood home. But before he could say a word, the girl jumped up and ran toward the creaky front door. "Come on," she called. "I'll show you my favorite room." He opened his mouth to stop her, but before he could, she disappeared inside. And that's when he saw something move in the window. A shadow. Slow. Tall. He took a step back, heart pounding. There shouldn't be anyone in there. And as the wind whispered through the trees, he heard a faint sound, like laughter. Not the girl's. Someone else's. He froze where he stood. Because he suddenly realized, the past doesn't always stay buried. And sometimes, a dream house comes with ghosts. "Ava!" James shouted, his voice trembling. The front door creaked as it swung open wider, the hinges screaming like something alive. The little girl had already vanished inside. James hesitated at the gate, the wind tugging at his jacket. The house looked different now. Darker, older. Like it had been waiting for him. He swallowed hard. "It's just an old house," he whispered to himself, stepping forward. "There's no such thing as ghosts." The porch groaned under his weight as he climbed the steps. Every sound echoed, the creak of the wood, the flutter of loose curtains, the faint hum of traffic in the distance. "Kid?" he called again, his voice softer this time. "You shouldn't be in there. It's not safe." No answer. He pushed the door gently, and it swung open with a long, slow moan. Dust floated in the sunlight like tiny ghosts. The smell hit him. Old wood, mold, and something faintly sweet, like faded memories. "Where are you?" he asked, stepping into the hallway. He remembered this place now. The long corridor. The faded wallpaper with little blue flowers. The cracked picture frame that still hung crooked on the wall. And suddenly, he wasn't a billionaire anymore. He was a small boy again, running barefoot down this hall, laughing as his mom chased him with a towel. He stopped in front of the old living room door. It was slightly ajar. He pushed it open slowly, and froze. Ava was sitting on the dusty floor, right in the middle of the room, smiling up at him. "I knew you'd come in," she said proudly. "Don't be scared." He let out a shaky breath. "Scared?" "I'm not scared," he said, though his voice cracked. She giggled. "Then why are your hands shaking?" He looked down, and sure enough his hands trembled. "Kid, you shouldn't be here," he said firmly, trying to sound like an adult again. "This place could fall down any second." "But it hasn't," she said softly. "It's been standing all this time. Waiting." "Waiting for what?" he asked. She shrugged. "Maybe for someone to come back." Her words made his chest tighten. He turned away, pretending to study the room, but his eyes stung. Everything was still there. The old brick fireplace, the broken armchair in the corner, the spot on the wall where his mother used to hang her favorite painting. He could almost hear her voice. "Jamesy, come help me set the table." He clenched his fists. "It's just a house," he whispered again. Ava tilted her head. "You talk to it like it's alive." He blinked. "What?" "You said it's just a house," she repeated. "But you said it like you were trying to make yourself believe it." He stared at her, caught off guard. There was something about this kid, the way she spoke like she understood more than most adults ever could. "What's your name again?" he asked, kneeling down. "Ava," she said. "Ava Thompson." He nodded. "Well, Ava, this place isn't safe. You and your mom shouldn't come here anymore." Her smile faded a little. "But Mama says dreaming doesn't cost money. And this is my dream house." He sighed. "Dreams don't fix broken roofs." "Maybe not," she said, eyes twinkling. "But they fix broken hearts." James looked at her for a long moment, unsure what to say. Then he stood up and walked toward the front door. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let's get out of here." She followed him reluctantly, pausing at the door. "You really think it's ugly?" she asked suddenly. He turned back to look at the house one more time. The walls were cracked, the windows shattered, the roof sagging under years of neglect. But beneath all that ruin, he saw something else. Faint traces of love, laughter, and childhood. He hesitated. "No," he said softly. "It's not ugly. Just tired." Ava smiled. "That means it can be fixed." He didn't answer. They stepped outside together, and the sunlight hit them like a breath of relief. Ava ran ahead, spinning in the middle of the dusty road. "See," she called. "It's not so scary." James managed a small smile. For a moment, he almost felt lighter. But then from inside the house, something slammed. A door. Hard. James spun around. The front door was wide open again, but this time the air inside was different. Colder, darker. Ava stopped dancing. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. He nodded slowly. "Stay here," he said, taking a cautious step toward the porch. The boards creaked again under his feet. He peeked inside, scanning the dim hallway. Nothing. Just shadows and dust. Then, a sound. Faint. Rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from upstairs. He froze, heart pounding. No one had lived here for decades. No one should be here. He turned to Ava. "Is anyone else in there with you before I came?" She shook her head quickly. "No, sir. Just me." The tapping stopped. Silence. Then, suddenly, footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. Coming down the stairs. James stepped back instinctively. His breath hitched. "Hello," he called out. No answer. The footsteps grew louder. And then, from the darkness of the hallway, a shape appeared. Faint at first, like a shadow stretching across the floor. Ava grabbed his hand. "Mister, maybe we should go." He didn't move. He couldn't. Something in him needed to know what was in that house. When the figure finally stepped into the light, James's entire body went numb. It was the old woman. The same one who had spoken to Ava days earlier. But she looked different now. Pale, tired, her eyes full of something that felt like sadness. "You came back," she said softly, looking straight at James. He froze. "I what? You finally came back home." James's throat went dry. "Do I know you?" She smiled faintly, her wrinkled face trembling. "You used to call me Miss Edna. I was your neighbor." A memory flashed, a kind woman who gave him cookies after school, who sat on her porch knitting while his parents argued inside. "Miss Edna?" he whispered. "You're still alive?" Her smile faded. "Alive?" She tilted her head slightly. "Oh, James. I haven't been alive for a very long time." The air went still. Ava gasped, clutching his arm. She's glowing." James's eyes widened. The old woman's outline shimmered faintly, her body half transparent. "I waited," she said softly. "I waited for you to come home. The house has been waiting too." James stumbled backward, his heart racing. "This isn't real. This can't be real." But the woman's expression was calm, kind. "You left with so much anger, James. The house broke because your heart did." He shook his head, breath trembling. No, I moved on. I built a life. I don't need this place." "Then why did you come back?" He had no answer. She smiled gently at Ava. "You have her heart, child. You see what others can't. That's why the house called you." "The house called me?" Ava whispered. Miss Edna nodded. "It never forgot him. And it needed someone pure enough to bring him back." Before James could speak, the ground beneath them shuddered. The front porch cracked loudly, splinters flying. "Run!" he shouted, grabbing Ava and pulling her away as the wood gave way behind them. The house groaned, as if alive, the windows rattling violently. Dust filled the air, choking them as they stumbled into the street. When they finally turned back, the old woman was gone. The house stood silent again, broken but still standing. James held Ava's hand, his heart pounding. "What just happened?" she whispered. He looked at the house, his face pale. "I think," he said quietly, "the house just woke up." The next morning, the sun rose quietly over the old neighborhood, spilling orange light across the cracked sidewalks. James hadn't slept all night. He sat in his car, parked across from the blue house, staring at it like it might move again. He didn't believe in ghosts. He didn't believe in anything he couldn't buy or prove. But after what he saw, the glowing woman, the shaking house, he didn't know what to believe anymore. Ava sat in the back seat, hugging her backpack. She hadn't said much since they ran. Every now and then she'd glance at the house, her eyes wide and sad. "You sure you're okay?" James asked, turning around to look at her. She nodded slowly. "It wasn't trying to hurt us," she whispered. He frowned. "The house." She nodded again. "It was scared." James blinked. "Scared." She leaned forward, her voice small. "It's been alone for too long." He didn't know how to answer that. She sounded crazy, but in a strange way, he knew she was right. When he looked at the house now, it didn't seem angry. It looked tired. Lonely. He rubbed his eyes. "Listen, Ava," he said softly. "You shouldn't come back here. It's dangerous. You need to stay away, okay?" "But what about you?" she asked. "You're gonna fix it, right?" He froze. "Fix it?" "Miss Edna said it broke because your heart did," she said gently. "So maybe if you fix the house, your heart will get better too." He chuckled bitterly. "Kid, my heart's fine. It's my brain that's the problem." Ava didn't laugh. "You don't look fine." Her honesty hit him harder than he expected. He turned away, staring through the windshield. After a long silence, Ava whispered, "Do you think Miss Edna's really gone?" He hesitated. "I don't know. But you saw her, right?" He nodded. "Yeah, I saw her." Ava looked down at her lap, her voice trembling. "Then maybe she's not gone. Maybe she's just waiting for us to listen." He didn't respond. He didn't want to. Because deep down, he knew there was truth in her words. By noon, James was back in his downtown office, trying to focus on spreadsheets and contracts. But every time he looked at the paper, All he saw was the porch swing, the crack in the step, the glowing woman's eyes. "Sir." Claire's voice cut through his thoughts. "The investors are waiting for you in the conference room." He blinked, realizing he'd been staring at the same email for 10 minutes. "Right. I'll be there." He stood up, straightened his tie, and walked into the conference room. Men in suits greeted him with firm handshakes and polite smiles. On the screen behind them, the map of the South District glowed, a web of red lines marking properties soon to be demolished. One of the men, a developer named Mr. Harlan, smiled. "We're ready to begin Phase 2, Mr. Callahan. We can have bulldozers in by next week." James's eyes landed on one of the small dots on the map, the one marking the blue house. He felt his stomach twist. "Wait," he said suddenly. "Not that one." Mr. Harlan frowned. "Which one?" "The property on Myrtle Avenue," James said firmly. Harlan scrolled in. "You mean the condemned blue house? That thing's falling apart. We'll save money knocking it down." "No," James said again, sharper this time. "Not yet." The room went quiet. Harlan blinked. "Sir, is there a problem?" James hesitated. He couldn't exactly say the house has a ghost. So he said the first thing that came to mind. "I want to inspect it personally." "Inspect it?" Harlan repeated. James nodded. "Something about it doesn't sit right. Put a hold on the demolition until I say otherwise." Harlan exchanged confused looks with the others but finally shrugged. "Your call, Mr. Callahan." The meeting continued, but James barely heard a word. His mind was already back at Myrtle Avenue. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring and emotional stories like this. That evening, he found himself standing there again, the sun setting behind the house. The air smelled of dust and pine. He didn't know why he came back. Maybe Ava was right. Maybe part of him wanted to fix it. He stood there for a long time before finally pushing the gate open. It squealed, just like it did when he was a kid. "All right," he muttered, stepping onto the porch. "Let's see what you want from me." The house was silent. No footsteps. No glowing figures. Just the hum of the evening air. He stepped inside, his shoes crunching on broken glass. He wandered from room to room, memories flashing like old photographs. The kitchen where his mom used to bake, the hallway where he used to race his dog, the corner where his dad shouted at nothing. He found the old dining table still there, its legs crooked, its surface covered in dust. He touched it gently. "I didn't mean to forget you," he whispered. The air shifted. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. He looked up. "Miss Edna?" No answer. He climbed the stairs carefully, the steps whining under his weight. At the top, the hallway stretched out, darker than he remembered. The last door on the right was his old bedroom. He hesitated before turning the knob. Inside, the air was cold. The wallpaper was peeling. His old toy car lay on the floor, covered in dust. He crouched and picked it up, brushing it clean with his thumb. And that's when he heard it. A faint giggle. He froze. It wasn't Ava's voice. It was higher, younger, familiar. He turned toward the window. A shadow darted across the room. "Who's there?" he whispered. No answer. He took a step forward, heart pounding. Whose? Then he saw it. A small handprint on the glass. Fresh. He stared at it, his breath shallow. "That's not possible," he whispered. "That's not." Before he could finish, the lights flickered. Once, twice. And then the window slammed shut with a bang that shook the room. He stumbled back, dropping the toy car. It rolled across the floor and hit the wall, landing beside something he hadn't noticed before. A small box. He knelt and picked it up. It was wooden, with faded letters carved into it. J.C. His initials. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were tiny trinkets from his childhood. A marble, a photo of his parents, a letter written in his mother's handwriting. He unfolded the letter slowly. "My dearest James, if you ever find this, I hope you remember what this house really means. It's not just wood and nails, it's love. And love doesn't die, even when people leave." A tear rolled down his cheek before he realized it. Suddenly, the door creaked behind him. He turned. Ava was standing there, holding a flashlight. You came back, she said softly. He wiped his face quickly. You shouldn't be here. She shrugged. You said the same thing last time. He sighed. You followed me? She nodded. Mama's working late. I didn't want you to be alone. He didn't know whether to scold her or thank her. This place isn't safe, he muttered. Ava stepped closer, shining her flashlight around the room. It feels different now, she said. Like it's breathing again. He looked around. The air really did feel lighter somehow. The dust had settled, and the cold had lifted. Ava smiled faintly. You found something, didn't you? He hesitated, then handed her the letter. It's from my mom. Ava read it slowly, her eyes glistening. It's beautiful, she whispered. She loved you a lot. He nodded, his throat tight. Yeah, I think she did. Ava looked up at him. Then maybe that's what the house wanted you to remember. Before he could answer, the floor trembled beneath their feet, a soft rumble at first, then stronger. Ava's eyes widened. Is it happening again? The window rattled, the lights flickered, and a low groaning sound echoed through the walls. James grabbed her hand. Hold on. The floorboards cracked. Dust rained from the ceiling. The house moaned like it was alive again. Only this time, it didn't sound angry. It sounded sad. And through the noise, a voice whispered, soft and distant, but clear. Help me remember. Ava squeezed his hand tightly. Did you hear that? She cried. James nodded slowly, his heart racing. He looked around the shaking room, eyes wide. It's not just a house, he said. It's trying to tell us something. The rumbling stopped as suddenly as it began. Dust hung in the air like fog, and the house fell silent again. James's heart thudded in his chest. Ava was still clutching his hand tightly, her flashlight trembling in her grip. Are you okay? He asked. She nodded quickly. Yeah. But what was that voice? He exhaled shakily, staring at the ceiling. I don't know, but I heard it too. Ava looked up at him. It said, help me remember. James nodded slowly, his mind racing. Help me remember. The words echoed in his head like an unanswered question. He turned toward the box again, the one with his initials carved into it. Maybe there's something else, he muttered. Ava crouched beside him, curious. What's that? My old keepsake box, he said. I thought it was gone. He lifted it, and something rattled underneath the loose floorboard it had been sitting on. He frowned, then pried the board up with his hands. Beneath it was a small metal tin, rusted shut. Ava's eyes widened. You think it's yours too? He shrugged. Only one way to find out. He used the edge of a nail to pop it open. Inside, wrapped in a torn piece of paper, was a silver locket and a folded photograph. The photo was faded, but he recognized it immediately. His mother, smiling, standing beside a small black woman holding a baby. James blinked. What is this? Ava leaned closer. That's your mom, right? He nodded, still staring at the picture. Yeah, but I don't know who the other woman is. Or the baby. The back of the photo had writing in his mother's familiar cursive. For the one we promised to protect. A chill ran down his spine. Promise to protect? He whispered. Ava frowned. Maybe that's who's talking to us. James looked at her sharply. You think the voice belongs to who? That woman. Ava shrugged. Maybe. Or the baby. He shook his head. No. That doesn't make sense. My parents didn't. But he stopped himself. He didn't actually know what his parents did after that night. He'd left when he was 10, after a terrible fight, and never came back. Ava stood up, walking slowly toward the door. Mr. James, I think the house remembers more than you do. He glanced up at her. What do you mean? She pointed to the walls. Every time something happens, it's like the house is trying to show you something. Like it wants you to see the truth. He wanted to argue, but deep down he knew she was right. The strange energy in the house didn't feel random. It felt like it had a purpose. He looked down at the locket again. Inside was a small photo of his mom and dad, and behind it, etched in tiny letters, were two initials, LT. LT? He murmured. Who's that? Ava tilted her head. Could it be the woman in the picture? Maybe, he said softly. But why would my mom have this hidden here? Before he could think more, a sudden gust of wind blew through the room, scattering dust and loose papers. The window had opened on its own again, the curtains flapping wildly. Ava gasped. Mr. James. He shielded his face, trying to close the window, but then he froze, because for a brief second, in the reflection of the glass, he saw her. Miss Edna. Standing behind him. Her eyes were kind but sad, her voice faint as a whisper. Find her, James. He spun around. Find who? But she was gone. Only Ava's frightened face remained. She was here again, wasn't she? He nodded slowly. She said. Find her. Find who? Ava asked. I don't know, he whispered, staring at the locket. But I think she meant the woman in the photo. Ava's voice trembled. You think she's still alive? He hesitated. If she's not, then maybe. She's the one haunting the house. The thought sent a shiver down both their spines. James stood, tucking the photo and locket into his pocket. Come on. We're leaving. But. No buts, he said firmly. We need answers. And I know someone who might have them. That someone was Mrs. Turner, the oldest resident still living on the street. She'd been the neighborhood storyteller since before James was born, and rumor had it she remembered everything. By the time they reached her house, the sun had dipped below the trees, and the porch light flickered weakly. James knocked, and after a moment, a shaky voice answered. Who is it? James Callahan, ma'am, he said softly. I used to live down the road. The blue house. The door opened slowly, revealing a tiny woman with silver hair and kind eyes. When she saw his face, she gasped. James Callahan? Lord have mercy, I thought you'd never come back. James managed a faint smile. It's been a while. She looked past him and spotted Ava. And who's this sweet girl? Ava grinned. I'm Ava, ma'am. Mrs. Turner nodded approvingly. Well, come in, both of you. The night's too cold to be standing out there. They followed her inside. The house smelled like cinnamon and old wood. Photos lined the walls, black and white pictures of the old neighborhood, some even of the blue house before it fell apart. Mrs. Turner motioned for them to sit. Now, what brings you back after all these years? James took a deep breath. I found something, in the house. A picture of my mom with another woman. A black woman holding a baby. Mrs. Turner's eyes widened slightly, her hand trembling. You found that photo? James leaned forward. You know about it? She nodded slowly. Oh, I remember. Your mama and that woman. Her name was Lydia Thompson. They were close. Like sisters. Ava's head snapped up. Thompson. James turned to her. That's your last name. Ava's eyes widened. You think? Mrs. Turner continued, not noticing the exchange. Lydia lived down the street with her little girl. Sweetest baby you ever saw. But one night, something happened. There was a fire at your house. James froze. A fire. Mrs. Turner nodded sadly. Your parents never spoke about it again, but folks said Lydia ran in to save your mama. She got the baby out first but didn't make it back out herself. The room went silent. Ava's voice was barely a whisper. The baby survived? Mrs. Turner nodded. Yes, child. Your mama took her in for a while, before some relatives came to get her. James's hands shook. So the woman in the photo, Lydia, died saving my mother? Mrs. Turner nodded again. That's the truth, son. Your family owed there's a debt of love. Ava sat still, her eyes wide with realization. My mama's name is Monica Thompson, she said softly. Lydia was my grandma. The words hit James like thunder. He stared at her. You're Lydia's granddaughter? Ava nodded slowly. Everything suddenly made sense. Why Ava felt drawn to the house, why the voice called to them both. Miss Edna's whisper echoed again in his mind. Find her. It wasn't Lydia he was meant to find. It was Ava. She was the connection, the bridge between the two families, bound by a promise made long ago. James leaned back in his chair, his heart heavy. All this time, he said softly, I thought I left the past behind. But it never left me. Mrs. Turner placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. You can't run from what's meant to find you, son. Maybe that house isn't cursed after all. Maybe it's just waiting for peace. Ava looked up at him. Then we have to help it remember, Mr. James. We have to finish what our families started. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, he said quietly. We'll go back. Mrs. Turner's smile faded. Be careful, child, she whispered. That house remembers everything, even the things you wish it didn't. As they stepped back into the cool night, the wind whistled softly through the trees. The blue house loomed at the end of the street, silent and still, its broken windows glowing faintly in the moonlight. Ava took James's hand. It's waiting for us. He nodded, staring at the house that once held his laughter, his pain, and now his redemption. And somewhere, deep inside those crumbling walls, a soft whisper answered back. Come home. The road back to the blue house felt longer this time. The moon hung low, a pale eye watching from behind drifting clouds. The air carried a chill that made the night feel alive, like something was waiting. Ava walked beside James in silence, her small hand wrapped around his. Every step toward the house made her heart beat faster. She didn't know if she was scared or drawn. Maybe both. When they reached the front gate, James stopped. The hinges groaned as the wind pushed it open on its own. Ava looked up at him. It's like it knows we're here. James exhaled slowly. Yeah. And it's not hiding anymore. They crossed the overgrown yard. The porch creaked beneath their feet. James pulled a flashlight from his pocket and pushed the door open. The inside was darker than before. The smell of old wood and dust hung heavy. Yet something was different. The air didn't feel cold this time. It felt awake. Ava whispered, She's here. James nodded. Yeah. She's been waiting. He turned on the flashlight and aimed it toward the hallway. The family portraits were clearer now. Faces once faded by time now seemed freshly drawn, details returning like memories resurfacing. Ava pointed. Look, that's her. The same black woman from the photograph, Lydia, was in one of the portraits. She was standing beside James's mother, both smiling, arms linked. The photo hadn't been there before. James took a step closer, his breath catching. This wasn't here earlier. Ava's voice trembled. She wants you to see. He touched the frame. For a brief second, the world around them shifted, flickering, like an old film reel starting to play. The room brightened. And suddenly they weren't alone. They stood in the same living room. But it was new again. The walls were clean, the air warm. The faint scent of peach cobbler drifted from the kitchen. A young James sat at the table, his mother beside him, laughing. Across from them sat Lydia, rocking a baby gently in her arms. Ava clutched James's sleeve. We're seeing the past. He nodded, too stunned to speak. The younger James's mother smiled. Lydia, you spoil us. You don't have to bring dessert every time you visit. Lydia chuckled softly. Now, Mary, you know I can't help myself. You feed my child when I work late. I owe you. Mary reached over and touched her hand. You don't owe me anything. You're family. Then the scene flickered again. The air grew hot, smoky. Someone screamed. The kitchen burst into flames. James flinched, watching his mother grab the young boy, his younger self, and push him toward the door. Lydia was holding the baby, trying to find a way out. Go! Lydia shouted. Get him out. Mary turned back. Lydia! But the roof cracked, sending sparks raining down. The fire roared, swallowing the sound. Then it all vanished. The house returned to its ruined, dark self. The smell of smoke lingered faintly. Ava's eyes were wide with tears. She saved your family. James nodded, his throat tight. She did. And my mother never forgave herself for not saving her back. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the memory pressing down. Then a soft voice spoke from behind them. You've seen it now. They turned. Miss Edna stood at the foot of the stairs again, shimmering faintly in the dark. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried centuries of sorrow. James stepped forward. You showed us what happened. But why now? Miss Edna smiled faintly. Because the girl needed to see it. And you needed to remember. Ava blinked. Me. The spirit nodded. You are her blood. The child Lydia saved.
Her strength runs in you.
Ava's lips trembled.
Then why can't she rest?
Miss Edna's gaze softened.
Because promises were made but never kept. The house remembers what the heart tried to forget.
James frowned.
What promise?
Edna turned to him. Your mother vowed to keep Lydia's memory alive, to make sure her story wasn't erased. But she let guilt bury it instead.
The truth was hidden, the house sealed, and the pain remained.
Ava's hand found his again. So we have to keep the promise. James nodded slowly. We'll do it.
We'll make people remember her.
The ghost's form began to fade, her voice barely a whisper. Then the house will sleep again.
But first, one more truth.
Her hand lifted, pointing to the staircase.
Go to the attic.
And with that, she was gone. They climbed the stairs together. Every step groaned like the house was breathing. Dust swirled in the flashlight beam. When they reached the attic, James pushed the door open. The smell of smoke and old cedar filled the air. Boxes were stacked high, but one sat apart, a trunk with a scorched lid. He knelt and opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied with faded ribbons. He picked one up and read aloud. Dear Lydia, if anything ever happens, I promise to raise her as my own. I'll keep her safe and loved. You have my word. Mary. Ava's breath caught. That's your mom's handwriting. He nodded.
And this must have been before the fire.
He opened another letter. She laughs like you. Every time I see her, I remember that night. I wish I could tell her the truth, but I'm afraid. Afraid she'll hate me. A tear slid down his cheek. She kept her promise, but she was too ashamed to tell anyone. Ava reached into the trunk again and pulled out a small wooden toy, a rattle carved with the initials A.T. Ava Thompson. Her eyes widened.
This was mine. James looked at her in wonder.
Then she really did keep you here for a while. A faint glow filled the room. They turned, and standing by the window was Lydia herself. Her form was bright, her smile soft and full of peace. She looked at Ava first. My little one, she whispered.
You've grown so strong.
Tears spilled down Ava's cheeks.
Grandma.
Lydia nodded.
You carry my heart.
And you helped me find my peace. She turned to James. And you, thank you for remembering.
For not turning away.
He shook his head, overwhelmed.
I should have come home sooner.
Lydia smiled gently.
You came when it mattered.
The attic glowed brighter, and the letters lifted into the air, swirling like golden fireflies. The light filled every corner, washing away the shadows. Then Lydia spoke one last time. Tell our story. Let the world know love has no color, no walls, no shame. That's how you keep us alive. And with that, she faded into light. The house sighed, literally sighed, as the boards settled and the air grew still. Ava wiped her tears. She's gone. James nodded, smiling softly. No. She's finally home. They spent the rest of the night packing the letters and photos, careful not to leave anything behind. When they stepped outside, dawn was breaking, gold and pink over the horizon. The blue house looked different now. Come, Hull. Ava turned to James. What will you do with it? He looked up at the windows, the faint sunlight glinting off the glass. Turn it into something that matters. Maybe a shelter. Or a museum. A place where people can come and hear stories like hers. Ava grinned. You could call it the house that remembers. He chuckled softly. Yeah, that's perfect. They stood side by side, watching the sunrise wash over the house. Two families. One story. A promise finally kept. And somewhere, carried on the morning wind, a whisper of gratitude lingered. Thank you. The blue house stood quietly under the morning sun, its broken windows now glinting like glass eyes waking from a long sleep. The cracks in the walls looked softer somehow, as if they had exhaled after years of holding their breath. The wind that used to howl through the empty rooms now whispered gently through the porch rails, like a sigh of peace. James stood at the gate with Ava, staring up at it. The night before felt like a dream. Too vivid, too full of impossible beauty to be real.
Yet, the bundle of letters in his arm told him otherwise.
Ava tugged his sleeve.
She's really gone, huh?
He nodded slowly. Yeah. But she's not gone for good. Spirits like hers don't disappear. They rest. Ava smiled faintly. Then I hope she's dreaming about peach cobbler. James laughed softly. The sound surprised him. It had been years since laughter came that easy. They walked down the dirt road together, the early light catching on dew-dropped grass. For the first time in a long time, James didn't think about money, or board meetings, or headlines. He thought about a woman who'd given her life for another family, and a little girl who had unknowingly brought her memory back to life. That afternoon, James sat in his sleek downtown office, the letters spread across his mahogany desk. Outside, skyscrapers glistened like silver blades in the sun, but his mind was still in that old wooden house. His assistant, Claire, stepped in, balancing a tablet and a coffee. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, trying to sound playful. He smiled faintly. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me," she said. He handed her one of the letters. "This was written by a woman named Mary, my mother. And it's about a woman she never told me about. Lydia Thompson, Ava's grandmother." Claire skimmed the page, frowning slightly. This is incredible. Why haven't you shared this before?" "Because I didn't know it existed until last night." She looked at him in disbelief. "You found these in your old house? The one from your childhood?" He nodded. "And I think I finally understand what I'm supposed to do with it." Claire tilted her head. "You're thinking of restoring it, aren't you?" "Not just restoring it," James said, leaning back in his chair. "I want to turn it into something that matters. A home for kids like Ava. Kids who dream big even when the world gives them small chances." Claire's eyes softened. "That's beautiful." "It's overdue," he said quietly. By the end of the week, James was back at the Blue House with a team of architects and contractors. The workers moved carefully through the old structure, studying beams, taking notes, measuring foundations. Ava stood beside him, her eyes wide as the men walked around in hard hats. "They're really gonna fix it?" "Not just fix it," he said. "They're going to bring it back to life." She grinned. "Then can we paint it blue again? Not dark blue, like sky blue." He nodded. "Sky blue it is." As they walked through the house, Ava stopped at a cracked wall and traced it gently with her finger. "It's weird," she said. "Even though it's broken, it still feels safe." James looked around, feeling the same thing. "That's because it's not broken anymore. It's healing." A voice interrupted them, one of the workers calling from upstairs. "Mr. Reynolds, you might want to see this." James and Ava climbed up. The man stood in the attic, pointing to a section of wall where the plaster had fallen away, revealing old handwriting scrawled directly onto the wood beneath. James moved closer, brushing off the dust. The words were faint but legible. "For Lydia. For love that doesn't burn away." His chest tightened. "My mother wrote this," he whispered. Ava's voice was soft. "She didn't just remember her. She wrote it into the house." He smiled faintly. "Guess the house really did remember everything." Over the next few weeks, construction began. The creaky floors were reinforced, the walls repainted, the yard cleared of weeds and debris. Local kids from the neighborhood often stopped by, curious about what was happening. Ava took it upon herself to tell them stories about the lady who made the house glow. James worked day and night, pouring money and heart into the project. The mansion that had once been forgotten was slowly transforming into the house that remembers, a place for hope, learning, and second chances. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, the entire town gathered. Reporters filled the sidewalk, their cameras flashing as the sign was unveiled. Ava stood proudly beside James, dressed in a yellow sundress that Lydia would have loved. A journalist raised a hand. "Mr. Reynolds, what inspired this project?" James paused, looking up at the restored blue walls behind him. The breeze carried the faint scent of paint and old wood. "Once," he began, "a little girl showed me a dream house. I laughed at her, because I thought dreams were just for kids. But she reminded me that sometimes, dreams are what rebuild the world." The crowd grew quiet. "This house," he continued, "was once a place of pain and loss and forgotten promises. But now, it's a place for healing. It's for the children who've lost homes, families, or faith in people. It's for those who need to remember that kindness can outlive anything." Ava smiled up at him.
Even fire? She whispered.
He smiled back.
Especially fire.
The crowd erupted into applause as James and Ava cut the ribbon together. That evening, when the guests were gone and the lights inside the house glowed softly, James stood alone in the living room. The air was warm again, not from ghosts or sorrow, but from life. Ava ran in, holding a candle.
Look.
I found this in the box of old stuff.
Can we light it?
He nodded.
Go ahead.
She placed it on the fireplace mantel and lit it carefully. The small flame flickered, throwing soft light across the room.
It's for her, Ava said quietly.
For Lydia.
So she'll always see the light.
James placed a hand on her shoulder.
She'd like that.
They stood together in silence, watching the flame dance.
Then, just as James turned to lock up for the night, he noticed something in the reflection of the window, a faint shimmer by the staircase.
He froze. Ava saw it too.
Is that?
Miss Edna stood there, faint and smiling, her form soft as moonlight. She nodded at them both.
You did it. The house remembers, and so will the world.
Ava grinned.
You can rest now.
The old woman's smile widened.
Oh, child, I already have.
And then she was gone, leaving behind only the warmth of her voice and the flicker of the candlelight. James took a deep breath, feeling the peace settle in his bones. The house no longer felt haunted. It felt whole. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, church bells chimed. Ava yawned.
I'm sleepy.
He smiled.
Come on. Let's go home.
As they stepped out onto the porch, the candle's glow followed them through the window. And though the house stood silent, a whisper seemed to echo in the air. Thank you for remembering. James looked back one last time and smiled.
Always.
They walked away hand in hand beneath the glowing night sky, leaving behind not a haunted house, but a home reborn. The weeks after the ribbon-cutting ceremony were some of the most peaceful days James Reynolds had ever known. The house that remembers was finally open. Children played in the yard, their laughter filling the air where silence once lived. Bright murals now covered the once cracked walls, paintings of families, open hands, and stars stretching toward the sky. Ava was always there, helping paint, planting flowers, and reading to the younger kids who came every afternoon. She had become the heart of the place without even trying. The staff adored her. Everyone did. But one evening, as the sun melted behind the trees, Ava sat quietly on the front steps of the house, hugging her knees. James noticed her from his office window and came outside. He sat beside her. You're quiet tonight.
That's not like you.
Ava shrugged.
I just feel weird. Weird how?
She hesitated, looking at the horizon. Like something's still missing.
Like the house isn't done talking.
James frowned slightly.
You think something's still here?
She nodded slowly. It's not bad.
Just waiting.
He sighed.
I thought all the spirits were at peace.
Maybe not all, she whispered. The wind shifted, blowing softly through the trees. For a moment, James thought he heard something. Faint, like a distant lullaby humming from inside the walls. He shook his head. Probably just the wind. But Ava's eyes were fixed on the attic window. It's not the wind, she said quietly. That night, James couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in his downtown penthouse, his thoughts circling back to Ava's words. He sat up, grabbed his car keys, and before he knew it, he was driving back toward the blue house. The city lights faded behind him as he turned down the old dirt road. When he arrived, the house stood in silence, bathed in moonlight. The windows glowed faintly from the night lamps he'd left on. He stepped out of the car and stared at it for a long time. Just one last look, he muttered. The front door creaked open easily, as if expecting him. Inside, everything was still. The paintings, the furniture, the photographs they'd hung on the walls. The air felt calm but strangely alive. He walked upstairs, past the children's rooms, past the study, until he reached the attic. The door was already ajar. He hesitated before pushing it open. The moonlight poured through the window, landing directly on the old wooden trunk they'd found months ago, the one that had held the letters and Lydia's rattle. But now, something new sat beside it. A photograph. James knelt slowly and picked it up. His breath caught in his throat. It was a picture of Lydia holding a small baby, Ava, but standing beside her was another figure. His mother, Mary. The two women were smiling, arms linked just as they had in the earlier photo.
But in the background, standing between them, was a man James had never seen before.
He turned the photo over. On the back, written in the same familiar handwriting, were the words, "For the one we both loved."
His name was Thomas.
James frowned, confusion swirling through his mind.
"Thomas?" he murmured.
A faint creak echoed behind him. He turned sharply.
"Hello."
Silence. He took a deep breath. "Miss Edna?"
"Lydia?"
Nothing. He placed the photo back down and stood up. The room felt suddenly colder. The light flickered once, then twice, and then a man's voice. Deep, soft, and full of sorrow.
"You weren't supposed to find that."
James froze. The figure stepped out from the shadows near the window.
Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that looked too real to be a ghost's.
"Who are you?" James demanded. The man smiled sadly.
"Thomas."
James's pulse quickened.
"Thomas, the man from the photo?"
He nodded. "Your father's friend. And Lydia's secret." The words hit him like a hammer.
"What are you saying?"
Thomas's expression softened. "Your father and I built this house together. He wanted a home for your family. But when he left for work, I stayed. And in that time, I fell in love with Lydia."
James stepped back, his mind spinning.
"So you..." Thomas nodded. "Ava's grandfather. The fire. It wasn't just an accident. I tried to save them. I failed." The air in the attic seemed to thicken. The candlelight flickered wildly now, casting shadows that danced along the walls. James stared at him.
"Why are you telling me this now?"
"Because she can't rest until you know everything," Thomas said. "She forgave your mother."
"But she never forgave me."
James's voice broke.
"Then what do I do?"
Thomas looked down, his form beginning to shimmer faintly. "Tell her story. All of it. Not the cleaned-up version. The real one. About love that crossed every line people drew. About the fire that didn't just destroy, it revealed truth." James felt tears sting his eyes.
"You want the world to know?"
Thomas nodded. "That's what this house was built for.
Not just to remember, but to redeem."
The light grew brighter around him.
"Wait!"
James shouted.
"Thomas!"
But the spirit only smiled. "Thank you for coming home." And then he was gone. When the morning came, James was still in the attic, sitting beside the photograph. He hadn't slept, but he didn't feel tired. The truth, painful, human, beautiful, had settled in him like dawn after a long night. By the time Ava arrived with her mother, Mia, the sun had already filled the house with light. Ava ran upstairs.
"Mr. James, you didn't go home?"
He smiled faintly. "Not yet. I had company." Her mother frowned.
"Company?"
James handed her the photo. "You should see this." Mia looked at it, then gasped softly.
"That's my grandmother." "And the man beside her?" he asked gently.
Mia's eyes filled with tears. "My mother never told me.
She said my grandfather died before I was born."
James nodded. He didn't want to hide anymore.
"He wanted you to know the truth."
Ava looked between them. "Does that mean we're family?" He smiled softly.
"In more ways than one."
The little girl grinned, her eyes shining. "Then this house really did bring us together." James nodded, emotion tightening his throat. "Yeah, it did." Later that week, he called a press conference on the house's front lawn. The reporters gathered again, cameras flashing. James stood beside Ava and her mother, holding the photo of Lydia and Thomas for all to see.
"This house began as a promise," he said.
"But it also hid a secret. A secret about two people, Lydia and Thomas, who loved beyond color, beyond class, beyond what the world allowed. That love cost them everything. But today, we remember them not as victims, but as proof that love can outlive shame and survive fire." The crowd was silent. Even the wind stilled. James smiled faintly. "This house is no longer just a shelter. It's a truth keeper. Every story that was once buried will live here.
Because forgetting is how pain repeats." Ava squeezed his hand, whispering, "You did it."
He looked down at her and whispered back, "No, we did."
As the applause grew, the sunlight caught the top window of the attic, and for just a moment, James thought he saw them standing there. Lydia and Thomas, side by side, smiling down through the light. And when he blinked, they were gone. But he knew, deep down, they were home. That night, as the sky turned purple and gold, Ava and James placed 2 candles by the window. One for Lydia, one for Thomas. The flames flickered gently together, casting twin reflections on the glass. Ava leaned her head on James's arm. "Do you think they can see us?" He smiled softly. "I think they always could." The wind stirred again, brushing through the trees like a whisper of gratitude. And for the first time, the house felt not like a place that remembered sorrow, but one that celebrated love. The story of the house that remembers spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Within a month, people from all over the country were coming to visit. Teachers with students, journalists, historians, even families who had lost homes of their own. James never planned for fame, but the story of Lydia and Thomas, 2 souls who had loved across color lines and been forgotten by time, struck a chord with everyone who heard it. The house that was once a ghost story had become a symbol of hope. Every morning, as sunlight filtered through the restored blue windows, the air hummed with quiet energy. Laughter filled the rooms again. The scent of paint, paper, and fresh-baked bread floated down the halls. But not everything was calm. Ava had begun to dream again. Vivid dreams that felt too real. One night, she woke up in her new bedroom at the house, gasping. The moonlight fell across her bed, and her heart pounded hard against her chest. She'd seen Lydia again, but this time, Lydia wasn't alone. There was a little boy standing beside her, maybe 5 years old, clutching her hand. He had eyes that looked familiar. In the dream, Lydia had whispered, "He's still waiting." Ava sat up, trembling. She reached for the small notebook she kept by her bed and scribbled the words down before they could fade. "He's still waiting." The next morning, she found James in the kitchen, sipping coffee and reviewing papers for the foundation. "Mr. James." He looked up. "Morning, kiddo. You're up early." She slid the notebook toward him. "I had another dream." He frowned. "About Lydia?" She nodded. "And a little boy." She said he's still waiting. He set the cup down slowly. "Waiting for what?" "I don't know," she said softly. But he looked sad. James studied her for a long moment, then stood. "Show me exactly where you saw them." They climbed to the attic again. Dust swirled in the morning light as Ava pointed toward the corner near the old trunk. "Right there," she whispered. He was standing right there. James crouched, running his hand along the floorboards. The wood felt uneven. He tapped gently, thud, thud, hollow. "Help me move this trunk," he said. Together they pushed it aside, revealing a small, square panel cut into the floor. A loose plank. James pried it up carefully with a screwdriver from the nearby toolbox. Beneath it lay a dusty tin box. Ava's eyes widened. "Is that?" He nodded slowly. "Let's see." He lifted it out and opened the lid. Inside were more letters, brittle with age, but smaller, written in a different hand. A child's handwriting. He unfolded one and read aloud. "Dear Mama, I miss you. Miss Edna said I have to be brave, but I want you to come home. I keep the house clean like you said. Love. Jacob." Ava whispered. "Jacob?" James blinked. "Lydia's son?" She nodded. "The boy she was holding in my dream." James looked down at the letter again. He must have written these after the fire. He picked up another. "Dear Mama, the house talks to me. It creaks when I cry. Miss Edna says that means you're close. I'll wait till you come back." Ava's throat tightened. He really did wait. James took a shaky breath. And we never found out what happened to him. Later that day, James and Ava brought the letters downstairs to the main office, where Claire helped them research. They found an old record in the town archives, one that had gone unnoticed for years. Jacob Thompson, age 6, missing after the house fire, declared presumed dead. Ava's hand flew to her mouth. "He never made it out?" James shook his head. "But if the house still remembers him, maybe." He trailed off. The thought felt impossible. And yet, everything about this place had defied the impossible before. That night, he stayed behind after everyone left. He sat in the old living room, holding Jacob's letters. The house was quiet, but not empty. He spoke softly into the air. "Jacob, if you're here, it's okay. You don't have to wait anymore. Your mama found peace." The floorboards creaked once, gently, like a sigh. A light breeze brushed past him, stirring the letters on the table. One fluttered to the floor, landing face up. It wasn't one he had read yet. Slowly, he picked it up. "Dear Mr. James," Mama said, "if anything happens, find the man who laughs loud but cries quiet. He'll keep the house safe." "That's you." James froze, every hair on his neck rising. "Mama said." He looked around. How could she? But the air around him had changed, warmer now, almost peaceful. He felt, rather than heard, a small voice whisper, "Thank you." The next morning, James told Ava everything. She listened quietly, her small hands wrapped around a cup of hot chocolate. "So he was here," she said softly. "He waited all this time." James nodded. "And now I think he's gone home too." Ava looked up at him. "Then we have to tell his story too." "Right." He smiled. "Yeah, we do." James nodded. "But we can't move forward by hiding what hurts. We face it. We honor it." He paused, looking at Ava, then back at the crowd. "Lydia, Thomas, and Jacob built this home out of love. It's time we finish what they started, not just with wood and paint, but with kindness." There was silence for a moment, then quiet applause that grew louder and louder until it filled the air. Ava smiled through tears, clutching the locket tightly in her hand. That night, after everyone had left, James and Ava sat on the porch again, listening to the wind rustle through the oak leaves. "Mr. James," Ava said quietly, "do you think they know we found their letters?" He smiled gently. "I think they do." She looked up at the stars. "It's funny. The house feels different now. Lighter." He nodded. "Maybe because it's finally at peace." For a while, they sat in silence. Then Ava said, "You know what I think?" "What's that?" "I think Jacob wanted us to find that box," she said softly, "to make sure nobody ever forgot again." James looked at her, the corners of his mouth turning up. "You might be right, kiddo." She smiled. "Then let's make sure we never do." As the moon rose high above the house, James felt something shift inside him. Not sadness this time, but gratitude. For the first time in decades, he felt complete. The laughter that once haunted him now sounded like music. The ghosts that lingered were no longer lost. They were home. And so was he. But deep beneath the roots of the old oak tree, where the soil held memories of fire and love, something faint shimmered in the dark. A small golden key, long forgotten, waiting for the day someone would discover what it opened. The house might remember. But it still had one last secret to tell. To be continued in Chapter 10. Would you like Chapter 10 to focus on the discovery of what the golden key unlocks, or should it explore how the community begins to heal through the lessons of the house before the mystery continues? The following spring brought more change than anyone expected. By now, the house that remembers had become a small miracle in the heart of Willow Creek. Every weekend, cars lined the narrow road leading to the property. Reporters, teachers, parents with children. They all came to see the blue house that had once been a symbol of division and sorrow, now transformed into a place of unity and light. The foundation James started had grown beyond what he ever imagined. Scholarships were being awarded in Lydia and Thomas's names. Artists painted murals about love conquering hate. And Ava, bright, fearless Ava, had become the heart of it all. James watched from the porch one morning as she helped a group of children plant tulip bulbs near the walkway. Her laughter carried through the warm air, her small hands moving with purpose. "Plant them deep," she said, her voice full of confidence. "That way, when they grow, their roots won't break easily." James smiled. "Sounds like someone learned a thing or two about foundations." She grinned up at him. "You taught me that." He chuckled and knelt beside her, helping press soil over the bulbs. For a moment, the world felt peaceful, as if all the pain the house had ever known had finally found rest. But peace in Willow Creek never lasted long. Not in that house. A week later, a storm rolled in. The kind that made the windows rattle and the air thick with tension. James sat by the fireplace, going through some old documents, while Ava was curled up on the couch reading a library book. "Can I ask you something?" she said suddenly, closing the book. Sure, anything. She hesitated. Why do you think the house still feels alive? Even after everything? He looked into the flickering flames. Because it remembers, he said softly. It remembers pain, but it also remembers love. And love never really dies. It just changes. She nodded slowly, thoughtful. But before James could say more, a loud crash echoed from outside. Ava jumped. What was that? Probably just a branch, he said, standing up. I'll go check. But when he opened the door, his stomach dropped. Lightning had split the great oak tree in half. The same one at the edge of the property that had stood for more than 100 years. Rain poured through the jagged wound, washing mud down toward the foundation. Stay inside, Ava, he shouted as he ran out into the storm. He could barely see through the downpour, but something caught his eye, a glimmer of metal in the soil where the roots had torn apart. It looked like a box. James crouched, brushing mud away with trembling hands. The rain stung his skin, but he didn't stop. The box was old, rusted, and half buried. With one hard pull, he freed it from the earth. He stared at it, chest heaving. A memory tugged at the edge of his mind, the story Lydia had once told in her letters. We buried our hope beneath the oak, so it would live even if we couldn't. Could this be what she meant? By the time he brought the box inside, both he and Ava were soaked. She gasped when she saw it. Mr. James, what is that? I think, he panted, setting it on the table. I think it's something they left behind. The box's lock had rusted, but with a screwdriver and some effort, he pried it open. Inside lay several yellowed papers wrapped in oilcloth, and a small ornate key, glowing faintly gold under the light. Ava's eyes widened. It's beautiful. James carefully unwrapped the papers. They were letters again, but not just from Lydia or Thomas this time. There were new names. Familiar ones. He read aloud from the first. Dearest Lydia and Thomas, the house is finished. I've kept my promise. It will stand long after we're gone. But remember, the room beneath the floorboards holds the truth. Keep the key safe. Henry Miller, architect, 1921. James frowned. The room beneath the floorboards? Ava tilted her head. Like a secret room? He nodded slowly. Maybe. It sounds like the architect built something hidden. He picked up another letter, written in Thomas's hand this time. Lydia, if anyone ever finds this key, tell them to look where the light first touched the house. The truth lives there. Ava blinked. Where the light first touched. The front room, James whispered. That's where the morning sun hits every day. He looked at her, eyes gleaming. Ava, I think there's something under the floor of the front room. It was past midnight when they decided to check. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and thunder rolled far in the distance. James carried a flashlight and a small crowbar. Ava followed close behind, clutching the golden key. They stepped into the front room, the same one where Lydia had once played piano and where James had found the first letters months before. The floorboards creaked softly beneath their feet. He knelt, feeling along the edges until he found a faint seam, a narrow outline of a hatch, barely visible. This is it, he whispered. Help me lift it. Together they pried it open, revealing a small staircase descending into darkness. Ava gasped. There's really a room down there. James handed her the flashlight. Stay close. They descended slowly, their shadows stretching long against the dirt walls. The air was cool and smelled of earth and time. At the bottom was a wooden door, and a lock that shimmered faintly in the flashlight's beam. The key, James said quietly. Ava stepped forward, her hand trembling slightly. She fit the key into the lock. It turned with a soft click. The door swung open. Inside, the beam of light revealed a small preserved room. Shelves lined with books, faded photographs, and a single wooden desk. On the desk sat a framed picture of Lydia, Thomas, and little Jacob, smiling. Oh! Ava covered her mouth. They're all together. James took a shaky breath. This must have been Thomas's study. He built it to protect their memories when the world outside tried to erase them. He ran his hand along the wall, and found carvings etched into the wood. Names. Dozens of them. Each one was of a black family that had once lived in Willow Creek. Families who'd vanished from history when the riots came. Ava whispered. He wrote their names so nobody could forget. James nodded slowly, tears in his eyes. This isn't just a hidden room. It's a memorial. They stood in silence, the weight of history pressing softly around them. Then Ava said, her voice small but sure, "We have to show everyone." He smiled. "We will." But as they turned to leave, the flashlight flickered, once, twice, before going out completely. The room fell into darkness. A faint whisper filled the air, soft as breath. "Thank you for finding us." Ava froze. "Mr. James." He reached for her hand in the dark. "It's okay," he said, voice steady. "They're not haunting us. They're home." The light flickered back on for a moment, and in that brief second, both of them saw it. Lydia standing beside Thomas, with little Jacob between them. All smiling. And then just as quickly they were gone. Only the golden key remained, resting on the floor, gleaming faintly in the beam of light. James picked it up and whispered, "Rest now." They climbed back up into the house, hearts pounding but calm, the air above somehow lighter, freer. The storm outside had ended. But the story of the house had just opened a new door. The discovery of the hidden room beneath the house that remember sent shockwaves through Willow Creek. Within a week, historians, journalists, and even city officials arrived to witness what had been uncovered. James had expected interest, but he hadn't expected the emotion that came with it. The carved names on the wooden walls weren't just random families. They were ancestors. People who had vanished from records during one of the darkest chapters of the town's history. For years, Willow Creek had carried a silent shame, one that people avoided speaking about. The discovery forced that silence to break wide open. On the morning of the press announcement, the front yard was filled with camera crews and townspeople. A small podium stood before the porch, decorated with flowers Ava and the children had planted weeks before. James adjusted the microphone and glanced down at Ava, who stood beside him holding the golden key. She looked nervous but proud. He began, his voice steady but full of feeling. Almost 100 years ago, a man named Thomas built this home as a promise of love, a love the world told him he couldn't have. When hatred tried to burn it away, he didn't fight with fire. He fought with memory. He left behind the names of those who were never allowed to be remembered. He paused, glancing back toward the house. And with the help of a brave little girl named Ava, we found those names. Hidden beneath the floor, where no storm or cruelty could erase them. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. James continued. This house stands as a reminder that no matter how much time passes, truth finds its way back to the light. Today, we're opening that room, not as a secret, but as a memorial for every family that history forgot. Applause broke out, soft at first, then louder, echoing across the lawn. Ava beamed up at him, her small fingers tightening around the key. When it was her turn to speak, she stepped to the microphone, her voice quiet but strong. "My grandma used to say that when you love something enough, it starts to love you back. I think that's what happened to this house. It loved Lydia and Thomas and Jacob. And when everyone forgot them, it waited for someone to come remember again." Her words brought tears to more than a few eyes in the crowd. After the speech, James guided the guests down the narrow staircase into the hidden room. The town's mayor, a woman named Linda Pearson, placed a hand over her heart as she saw the carvings. "My great-grandfather's name is here," she whispered. "I didn't even know he lived in Willow Creek." James nodded. Thomas must have known these people. He was trying to save their stories. Linda turned to him, eyes shining. "Then we need to finish what he started." That evening, the town council voted unanimously to establish the Memory Room Museum, preserving the secret room as a permanent historical site. Architects began designing glass panels and temperature controls to protect the carvings, while artists volunteered to restore the photographs found inside. And Ava? She became the youngest honorary curator in the town's history. A few days later, while helping organize the restoration work, Ava noticed something strange on one of the carved panels. A small etching near the bottom corner. A symbol she hadn't seen before. "Mr. James," she called, kneeling. "Look at this." He leaned down beside her. It looked like a star inside a circle, faintly drawn beneath the name Henry Miller. "That's the architect's name," he said thoughtfully. "But what's the symbol mean?" Ava tilted her head. "It looks like a mark. Maybe he signed it." James frowned. "Or maybe it's something more." He ran his fingers over the carving and noticed that the wood beneath it felt different. Hollow. Bring me that small hammer, he said. Ava handed it to him, and he tapped gently. Thud, thud, hollow. With a careful motion, he pried away a thin section of wood, revealing a small recess hidden behind it. Inside was another envelope, sealed with red wax. Ava's eyes widened. Another letter? James nodded, heart racing. He broke the seal and unfolded the fragile paper. To the finder of this home, if you've come this far, you know the truth. But there's something else you must understand. This house wasn't just built for love, it was built for healing. Beneath every story of pain lies a seed of hope. It's up to you to plant it again. H.M. Ava looked up at him. Healing. He smiled softly. That's exactly what we've been doing. But as he folded the letter, something small slipped out from between the pages, a piece of faded blueprint. It showed a drawing of the house's structure, with one corner marked in red ink. Ava pointed. That's the garden. James nodded. The tulip patch we planted. Why would he mark that spot? She asked. I don't know, he murmured. But we'll find out. That evening, after everyone had left, James and Ava walked quietly to the garden. The air was still, and the sky was painted in soft purple hues. They stopped where the blueprint had marked an X, right under the old birdbath. Ava knelt down and brushed aside the soil with her hands. A few inches beneath, she found a flat stone with a single word etched on it. Hope. James crouched beside her, stunned. He wasn't hiding something this time, he said softly. He was reminding us. Ava smiled. He wanted people to keep planting. James nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. And we did. They sat there for a while, watching the last rays of sunlight touch the house. Mr. James, Ava said quietly, do you think the house will ever stop talking to us? He looked at her, a small smile playing on his lips. Maybe one day it won't need to. Maybe when everyone remembers, it can finally rest. Ava thought for a moment, then said, then we'll just have to make sure nobody forgets again. He chuckled. You've got a way of making promises that sound like destiny, kiddo. She grinned. Maybe it is. As night settled over Willow Creek, the blue house glowed softly in the moonlight. The tulips swayed in the breeze, the oak tree stood tall once more, and somewhere deep inside the walls, the faint sound of piano music drifted through. Not sorrowful this time, but gentle, joyful, whole. Lydia's song. It echoed faintly through the rooms, wrapping around James and Ava as they stood on the porch. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. For the first time in nearly a century, the house wasn't waiting to be found. It had been found, and it had found them too. But beneath the peace, one mystery still lingered. On the blueprint Henry left, near the edge of the page, there was a final note written in faded ink. If ever the house grows silent again, follow the river. The last chapter begins where the water meets the past. James stared at it long after Ava went to bed, the words circling in his mind. He didn't know what it meant yet. But something deep inside told him that the story wasn't finished. Not yet. The night after the discovery of the blueprint, James couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch steps, the folded paper resting in his palm, its edges worn and smudged with dirt. The moonlight shone dimly across the yard, casting silver reflections on the tulip petals. The phrase, follow the river, repeated in his head over and over again. The next morning, Ava came running down the path, holding her little backpack and wearing her favorite denim jacket. Mr. James. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What do you think the river means? James smiled faintly, rubbing his tired eyes. That's what I'm trying to figure out, kiddo. But I think we're supposed to find out together. The two of them studied an old map of Willow Creek at the kitchen table. A winding blue line cut through the edge of town. The Willow River. It snaked around the back of the neighborhood and passed near an abandoned railway bridge. Ava pointed at it eagerly. Look. The river runs right behind the old mill. That's close to here. James nodded. That must be what Henry meant. Maybe there's another clue along the riverbank. Ava's eyes sparkled with excitement. Then what are we waiting for? By midday, they set off, walking along the narrow dirt trail that led toward the water. The autumn leaves crunched under their feet, and the breeze carried the soft sound of rushing water. Ava skipped ahead, humming Lydia's song without even realizing it. The closer they got, the stronger the feeling grew in James's chest, a strange mix of anticipation and calm. It was as if the house itself had whispered, "Go on, keep walking." When they reached the riverbank, the air felt cooler. The old railway bridge towered above them, rusted and half covered in ivy. The river shimmered below like a ribbon of glass. Ava crouched near the edge, examining something half buried in the mud. "Mr. James, come look at this." He hurried over and knelt beside her. There, sticking out from the soil, was a small metal plaque, tarnished and almost unreadable. James brushed away the dirt carefully until the faint letters appeared. "In memory of the ones who never made it home." Ava frowned. Who were they talking about? James stared at the plaque, silent for a moment. I think they meant the ones who built the old railroad," he said softly. "Many of them were freed slaves who worked here after the war. A lot of them disappeared in floods, accidents, or worse. Maybe this was Henry's way of remembering them too." Ava's voice trembled. "So, the river really did meet the past?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, it did." They sat by the river for a while, letting the sound of the current fill the quiet. The water moved gently, reflecting the sky like a mirror. James found himself thinking about all the lives that had crossed through Willow Creek. Lives connected by pain, by courage, by hope. After a few minutes, Ava reached for something hidden behind the plaque. It was a small, rusted tin box. "Mr. James, there's something here." He helped her lift it out. It was sealed tight, but with a little effort, he pried it open. Inside was a folded photograph, faded and cracked, but still clear enough to make out the image. It showed Henry Miller, the architect, standing beside a younger Thomas and Lydia. Behind them was the house that remembers, freshly built and bright with new paint. Ava gasped. They all knew each other. James ran his finger along the photo's edge. Henry must have helped Thomas build the house. Maybe he even promised to protect it. But there was more. Inside the box was another piece of paper, yellowed and fragile. It looked like a letter. "If you are reading this, the house still stands, and that means the promise was kept. The house was built not only for love, but as a place of shelter, for anyone the world turned away. If you found the room and followed the river, then you are ready for the truth. Look beneath the bridge at sunset. What lies there will guide the next generation." H.M. Ava looked at James with wide eyes. "Beneath the bridge? Like under it?" James folded the paper carefully. "Looks like it. Guess we're not done yet." They waited until evening. As the sun dipped low, the river turned golden, reflecting streaks of orange and red. The bridge loomed above them, creaking softly in the wind. James climbed down the embankment carefully, Ava following close behind. Beneath the bridge, where the shadows grew deep, they noticed a cluster of stones arranged in a circle. "Do you see that?" Ava whispered. He nodded and knelt down. The stones weren't random. They formed the shape of the same star inside a circle that Henry had carved into the wooden wall in the secret room. Ava touched the center of the design. "What do you think it means?" James studied it, his mind racing. Maybe it's another marker, or maybe it's where Henry buried something important. He picked up a stick and began to dig gently in the dirt inside the circle. After a few minutes, the stick hit something solid. Ava gasped. "There's something there." James used his hands to clear away the soil. Slowly, a small wooden box appeared, sealed and weathered, but still intact. He pried it open carefully, and inside was a small leather-bound book. On the cover were the initials T.L. "Thomas and Lydia," James murmured. Ava leaned closer. "It's their diary." He opened the first page. The handwriting was elegant and faded, but still legible. March 3rd, 1895. "Today, we finished the house. Henry says it's more than wood and brick. He says it's a memory made solid. He told me to keep this diary safe, in case the world forgets us again. If someone finds this, tell them we were happy, even when it wasn't easy. Tell them we forgave the ones who hurt us. And tell them the house was never just ours. It belongs to everyone who believes love is stronger than hate." Ava's eyes shimmered. "They forgave them?" James nodded slowly, his throat tight. "Yeah, they did." The pages were filled with memories. Simple ones about Lydia's songs, about Thomas fixing the porch, about Henry bringing his tools after storms. But between the lines, there was something more: peace. Acceptance. When James reached the final page, he read aloud the last line, written in Lydia's delicate script. When the river meets the past, the pain will finally rest. Let whoever finds this know, we are home. Tears welled in Ava's eyes. They really found peace, didn't they? James smiled softly, closing the diary. Yeah. And now maybe the town can too. As they walked back home, the night air felt lighter. The moon glowed brighter than usual, and the sound of the river followed them like a lullaby. When they reached the house that remembers, the front porch light flickered once, softly like a wink. Ava stopped and turned back toward the river. Do you think they're saying thank you? James looked at her and nodded. I think they already have. But as they stepped inside, a strange sound echoed from upstairs, a soft creak, followed by a faint whispering hum. It wasn't the piano this time. It was something else, something alive. Ava froze. Mr. James, did you hear that? He listened closely. The sound was coming from the attic, the one place they hadn't searched. Slowly, he reached for the flashlight and looked at her. Looks like the house still has one more story to tell. Ava grinned nervously. Then let's go hear it. And as they climbed the old staircase together, the house seemed to breathe. Not in fear this time, but in anticipation. Whatever waited above would change everything they thought they knew. The old staircase groaned under their feet as James and Ava climbed toward the attic. The air grew colder with every step, carrying a faint scent of cedar and time-worn paper. The flashlight flickered across the faded wallpaper and dusty beams, illuminating motes that danced in the air like tiny fireflies. Ava clutched the edge of James's sleeve. Why does it feel like the house is watching us again? James gave her a reassuring smile, though his heartbeat quickened. Maybe it's not watching, kiddo. Maybe it's waiting. They reached the attic door, a narrow wooden frame at the top of the stairs, sealed by an old brass latch. It looked untouched for decades. James hesitated for a moment before unhooking it. The metal creaked, and the door opened slowly with a low, echoing sigh, as though releasing the breath it had been holding for a century. Inside, the room was still and dim. Old trunks lined the walls, and tattered curtains swayed in the breeze from a broken window. The beam from the flashlight cut across the floorboards, landing on something peculiar in the far corner. A small chest covered in dust and cobwebs. Ava whispered, "That looks just like the box we found by the river." James nodded. "Let's take a look." They crossed the room carefully, the floor creaking beneath them. James knelt and brushed away the dust. Carved into the lid was the same star inside a circle, Henry Miller's mark. But beneath it were two new letters, freshly engraved though the chest was ancient. A and J. Ava blinked. A and J? That's us. James froze. His heart skipped. That can't be right. He traced the letters with his finger. They weren't recent carvings. The wood around them was aged, cracked, as though they'd been there for decades. Ava took a small step back, eyes wide. "Mr. James, how could our letters be there before we even found the house?" James didn't have an answer. He swallowed hard and unlatched the chest. Inside were dozens of neatly folded papers, photographs, and a single journal bound in red leather. He opened the first page carefully. The handwriting was familiar. The same looping script from Lydia's diary. But this one wasn't hers. The signature at the bottom read Henry Miller. If this reaches the hands it belongs to, then the promise has completed its circle. To the ones named A and J, the dreamers, the finders, the restorers of what was lost, know that this house was never just meant for us. It was meant for you. Ava's voice trembled. He knew we were coming? James turned the page. I have built many homes, but this one is alive. It remembers kindness and pain alike. It knows those who seek truth. One day, the world will forget again, but a child with hope and a man learning to forgive will find it. They will finish what we began. Ava covered her mouth. That's us, Mr. James. It's talking about us. James felt his throat tighten. It can't be. It's impossible. He turned another page, and there, pressed between the papers, was a faded photograph. It showed Henry Miller standing beside the young Thomas and Lydia, but in the background, blurred yet unmistakable, was James's childhood version of himself playing near the oak tree. He dropped the picture, stunned. Ava's eyes widened. That's you. James backed away, shaking his head. No, that's not possible. This photo's over 100 years old. Ava looked around the attic, her voice small but firm. Maybe the house really does remember. Maybe it remembered you before you even came. For a long moment, James couldn't speak. His mind spun with disbelief and awe. He'd grown up near Willow Creek. As a boy, he used to ride his bike past this house, always feeling drawn to it but never knowing why. Could it be that the house or something within it had called him back? He opened the journal again, his hands trembling. If you've reached this point, the river has spoken, the house has healed, and the past can rest. But there is one final act left. Not for the house, but for the heart. The story ends only when love is shared again. James looked at Ava, who was now kneeling beside the chest, her small hands touching one of the photographs of Thomas and Lydia. They never stopped believing in love, she said quietly, even when everyone hated them. He nodded slowly. And maybe that's why the house kept waiting. It didn't want to be remembered for tragedy. It wanted to be remembered for love. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring and emotional stories like this. The air in the attic shifted. Suddenly warm. A soft light began to fill the room, not from the flashlight, but from the walls themselves. The glow spread gently, bathing the floor and the rafters in golden light. Ava gasped. Mr. James, look. Before their eyes, faint figures began to appear. Transparent, shimmering outlines. Thomas stood beside Lydia, holding her hand. Henry stood behind them, his eyes kind, his face serene. They weren't ghosts, more like memories made of light. Lydia smiled gently. You found us. James's voice cracked. We found everything you left behind. Thomas nodded. And you gave it back to the world. That's all we ever wanted. Henry's voice was deep and calm. Every house has a heartbeat, but few ever learn to listen. You listened. Ava stepped forward timidly. The house wasn't haunted, was it? Lydia smiled. No, sweet girl. It was just waiting for kindness. Tears filled Ava's eyes. We'll take care of it. I promise. Henry looked at James, his gaze steady. Then it's yours now. The house is yours, and hers. Not to keep but to share. As long as love lives here, it will never fade again. The light began to fade, the outlines softening into the air like mist dissolving into dawn. Wait! Ava called. Will we ever see you again? Lydia's voice was barely a whisper now. Every time someone walks through that door and feels at home, we'll be there. And then they were gone. The light faded, and the attic fell silent once more. For a long while, neither of them spoke. James sat down on the floorboards, overwhelmed by what had just happened. Ava curled up beside him, leaning against his shoulder. Finally, she said, Do you think they're happy now? James nodded slowly. Yeah, I think they finally are. Ava smiled. Then so am I. He chuckled softly. You know something, kiddo? You changed everything. You gave this house a voice again. She grinned. No, we did. He ruffled her hair gently. Yeah, we did. The following week, the attic became the final piece of the Memory Room Museum. The journal, photographs, and diary were placed in glass cases, and visitors from all over came to see the story of the house that remembers. James gave tours now, not as a billionaire, but as a storyteller. Ava, proudly wearing her curator's badge, told children her age about Thomas and Lydia, about how love could build something stronger than hate. And sometimes, late at night, when everyone had gone home, James would stand on the porch with a cup of tea, listening. The breeze would move through the trees, the tulips would sway, and faintly, from somewhere deep within the walls, he'd hear it, the soft melody of Lydia's piano. Not sad this time. Just peaceful. Ava once asked him, months later, Do you ever miss the old world, the one before you found the house? James smiled, looking up at the sky. No, Ava. I think this was the world I was meant to find all along. She thought for a moment, then said, Then maybe it wasn't the house that remembered, Mr. James. Maybe it was love. He smiled, eyes glistening. Maybe you're right. The wind brushed gently against the porch railing, and somewhere far off, the river murmured softly, carrying the past away,
just as Henry promised. The circle was complete. The house stood proud and still, glowing under the sunset. It no longer waited for anyone to remember it. It was alive again. And this time it was home. If you enjoy this story, subscribe to the channel for more emotional and inspiring stories.